Welcome to another Indie Dev Showcase, highlighting the many indie games we play here on the channel. If you'd like to submit a game for a future video, please reach out. But otherwise, let's begin. For our first game, this is The Use of Life. Please note the footage you're seeing is taken from early access and may not represent the current version of it. This is, well, in its plainest definition, a mix of visual novel / choose your own adventure with a touch of RPG. After you are the last surviving member of your kind of tribe, you are left to wander the planet, getting into trouble and deciding how you want to live your life. Do you want to take revenge? Do you want to try and live a peaceful life? But of course, this being an RPG means you are going to fight your way out of a lot of situations. So the game itself again combines these different aspects. Decisions that you make as you explore each area will affect your stats. You can also spend points and unlock additional skills or specialize in different weapons. This will of course come into play when it's time for the RPG side. And the RPG gameplay kind of revolves around some of the basics of the genre. There is a little bit of action commands as you try and make proper button pressings to get increased damage or reduce it, but the world itself is going to evolve around these different chapters, and how you decide things will play out will of course lead to drastically different outcomes. So from what we played of this one during this was week 1 of early access, there's definitely some potential here for fans looking for that mix, and that's a very important point here. This is not a pure visual novel, and it's not a pure RPG, it's a combination of the two. But if you are looking for either an RPG with a lot of choices about how the story will play out, or a visual novel with turn-based combat to it, then this is definitely a game worth checking out. We now turn to Quetzal. This is a Latin American themed platformer, where the name of the game here is pogo bouncing off of projectiles, spikes, and more. So if you're a fan of that style from DuckTales or Hollow Knight, you are going to be right at home. Your mission is to explore various levels, trying to figure out what is going on, fight through enemies, and of course do as much platforming as one can certainly do. The challenge of this game is definitely revolving around using your pogo, as you'll have to use it to kind of bounce up and around a variety of objects. Advanced challenges will involve you doing it in areas where there is no safe ground, and it can certainly get quite challenging in that respect. The game came with a kind of bonus challenge I managed to do, which if it's still in the main game when it comes out, you may find my name listed in the acknowledgements for being able to do it. But all in all, Quetzal from what we played is a very finely tuned platformer. If you're looking for kind of a Metroidvania or one that has a lot of evolving elements to it, I don't know the game is going to go that far. But from what we played, just the foundation itself is quite solid, and it's looking to be a very entertaining and challenging platformer when it is released. Speaking about challenging, we now have Malice Greed. This is a roguelike by way of Shin Megami Tensei. You are exploring a very weird and dangerous world, and you're going to have to capture characters as well as devour, sell, or alter your friends and allies in order to get through the game. This is one of those titles that has a lot of things going on here. There are multiple persistent levels to go up, different kinds of bosses and challenges to do, and you even have kind of special modes and a very unique combat system as well. It features a very similar sense of the press turn system from Shin Megami, where hitting an enemy in their weakness will gain you added actions, hitting them with something that they resist or reflect will reduce actions. Every monster or character has different passive skills and so on, and you're going to have to make use of who you get access to and who you can kind of convert or capture to your team in order to build things out. And as I said, there's a lot of unlockables, special abilities, new characters, items, and so on. It is certainly a very substantial and very challenging game. With that said, there is unfortunately one kind of big elephant in the room here. The developer is splitting their focus between this and the vampire survivor-like spellbook Demon Slayers. And I don't know how this game is doing right now in terms of development. There were discussions about doing a complete revamp of the system, and I'm not quite sure where things are at now with it. It is certainly an interesting game in of itself, but at this moment in time, I can't tell you 100% if the game is still getting active updates or when the next big update is. If you're an RPG fan looking for something that is very challenging and certainly has a lot of depth to it, I would still recommend checking out Malice and Greed. So with that said, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have 3 more games to look at for this showcase. If you're interested in my thoughts on design, then be sure to check out my game design books. For entry-level students, we have 20 essential games to study, and then the Game Design Deep Dive series that takes an extensive look at different genres, with more coming soon. We now turn to Roadout. The footage you're seeing is taken from the demo and may not represent either the current version or the current demo of it. This is a kind of driving / open world action adventure game. It is the far future dystopia. AIs rule, and we play as someone trying to make a living out in the wastelands. The game itself kind of revolves around you driving around looking for dungeons, resource nodes, and so on, which you will then go in and brave, kind of isometric combat style, in order to gather resources, parts, and so on. Now, from playing this one or playing the demo, I don't believe that this is going to be like a roguelite. I think this is going to be like an action-adventure game, but there will be multiple decisions to make, characters to find, and so on. Now, the combat itself, as you can see, can be a little bit on the challenging side, as your main weapon is going to be in melee. But the mix of the open world exploration, upgrades, and so on was interesting, and it's definitely a game that I want to kind of keep an eye out for when it is released. And certainly this could be a very interesting action-adventure game. So if you're looking for something that is very combat and kind of Mad Max focus, then Roadout could be the game for you. We now have Untamed Tactics. The footage you're seeing is taken from the demo we played back in 2022 and may not represent the current version of the game or any updated demos. This is a kind of strategy RPG / roguelike in a way. The story itself is that it kind of follows the unreliable narrator, as a character is retelling the stories of his escapades to his children. And the story itself will go through different places, and you'll decide how things play out based on your decision making. Combat itself is built on you getting various upgrades and being able to even communicate with the different enemies in order to affect how they play or what they'll do during their turn. After each combat, you'll be able to upgrade characters by choosing which abilities they will unlock, as well as using items to modify or enhance their abilities, which of those will of course be consumed upon use. So the combat itself is going to be on the more involved side, as you'll have to use positioning, be able to knock enemies around the environment and the environment itself in order to win. Now, we didn't get to see too much of how replayable the different maps or the different campaigns will be in the demo, but this one is certainly looking like it's going to be an interesting and very involved strategy RPG when it is released. And I do believe they will be having an updated demo coming out either soon or sometime in 2023 at the time of me recording this one. But certainly a very challenging game, and I am looking forward to seeing how they'll develop the combat and the gameplay around the storytelling. For our last game of this week's showcase, this is Project Downfall. Now, the footage that you're seeing is taken from its early access, but the game was released at the end of 2022. So this is an over-the-top kind of first-person shooter meets Hotline Miami style game. It is a cyberpunk future, and one day we decide to, well, kind of go a little crazy. And we're going to explore this world, kill lots and lots of bad guys, or good guys, depending on how you want to go, and things will only get more and more destructive from there. The game itself boasts multiple endings based on which route you go, who you actually decide on killing, and it is certainly on the challenging side. Enemies are very quick to come after you, weapons only have so much ammo. Now, to help you, you have kind of a super meter that will allow you to do stuff like perform mega melee attacks, and you can also take drugs in order to give yourself some temporary bullet time in order to survive. Now, as you can probably guess by our lovely little icon in the upper left there and the action you've been seeing, this is certainly on the violent side. This is not going to be a game for the kids if any are watching. But this game is certainly an interesting one. We didn't get to spend too much time on it. I will probably go back and check it out now that it is released. But I do like the idea of having this kind of multiple choice or multiple routes, along with all the ways you're going to be killing. And the game is definitely built on that kind of flow state of getting to the point where you can just go to town on these enemies and just keep your combo and multiplier going. But again, make no mistake, this is definitely a hard game, or it can be hard if you're playing on the higher difficulties. But if you aren't squeamish and looking for another Hotline Miami fueled rage of FPS or combat, then Project Downfall could be a great game to check out. But with that said, we're going to wrap up this showcase here. As always, I'd like to thank developers for submitting games. You'll find links to all of them down below. Let me tell you your game for a future stream and video, please reach out. Be sure to visit our Discord and Patreon and do all that YouTubing stuff with likes and bells people will tell you to do. And come back for daily sessions on game design here and on game wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.